It's Sunday. It's 9 p.m. Central European time, and I just realized that we need to specify time zones more specifically for our guests. But you made it, Fraser. Welcome there. We got a special guest down here, Fraser, from the excellent YouTube channel, the Radio Rover. And Tobias is out today, so it'll be the five of us. And I got a couple of announcements before we get going here. I actually have two announcements. First of all, the European Ham Radio Show PODA Camp out July, and I should be better prepared, July 5th to 7th. On the Swedish West Coast. If you're interested, there is a channel for that in our Discord, and there's a link to a Google form that you can fill out if you're interested in coming, and we'll try to make this a great happening. If we're 3 people, if we're 30, we'll try to make it great nonetheless. Besides that, I'm putting on a Hamfest on July 22nd in Norway. So if you're Norwegian, most specifically, or from somewhere close by in Sweden, you're welcome. I'll post some more details on that later on. And now it's time for the ham radio moment of the week, which we have shortened our regular segment, which was the ham radio week, down to the moment of the week. And I guess for most of us, there won't be that many moments because there hasn't really been any ham radio for a lot of us this week. But Walt, what's your ham radio moment of the week?
Really? Absolutely hardly anything. This was really a strange week. I didn't do much. I mean, I got my rig right here, but I work from home and I cut it on and check things out. And it was just, we'll just call this a light week of taking it easy and taking care of other things in life other than ham radio, for sure.
Absolutely. And it's kind of weird on a Saturday. I had yesterday off, which rarely happens. I figured I'd play some radio. Check 20 meter FT8, and I had S1 signals on 20 meter FT8. So I figured no need to take my gear outside and play radio at all.
Yeah, it was one of those weeks where we're going to get these. I mean, we're coming up. Solar cycle 25 is going to be at maximum now. They're saying what, like 6-7 months in 2025 we're going to hit the peak. Yep. So I guess this is the what we have to suffer through to get the good stuff, and it is what it is.
Absolutely, and despite these moments of blackouts, conditions are still a lot better than when I got licensed in the bottom of the cycle, though. They've been improving all the time since I got licensed. So I really feel bad for how I'll feel when they start to decline again.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, same here, and I remember during the solar minimum back, 4 or 5 years, 3 or 4, whatever, when we all got going, it seems like 20 meter band was the only band that really was DXing to anywhere, you know what I mean? And that was what it was. And
yep.
And we'll get through it. We will. It's interesting and it's exciting. But like you said, right now with the solar flux, is baking that F layer a little bit for us. And after we pull it out of the oven, radio is going to be good. It's coming.
Oh, absolutely. I have no doubt. And I hope it's better tomorrow because I got tomorrow off as well. Fraser, what's your radio moment of the week?
Yeah, well, it's been quite an interesting week. My wife, Mo, and I, we had a couple of days off, so we took our camper Land Rover over to Aviemore in the Central Highlands, planned on doing a couple of summits, and already in the middle of the week, the HF bands were pretty rubbish, and so I heard straight away when I turned my radio on a summit, you can hear the noise, that it sounds different. So I thought, I'm not going to waste my time on 40 meters and 20 meters. And so I started straight on 15, which isn't usually used as a sort of SOTA band, but I made a load of contacts across Europe, all sort of solid 5 and 9. And then the following day, we went to a really remote summit, just a little hill. It only took an hour to walk up. And again, HF was even worse that day, but I somehow managed to qualify on 2 meters with a couple of summit to summits. One of them right across to the other side of Scotland on the west coast. And that really feels like DX when you're using a handheld and either a telescopic whip or one of these sort of Slim Jim things. So I got half a dozen contacts and 2 summit to summits, and I felt like I'd kind of worked the world on 2 meters because of my own position. And because the state of the sun, I actually managed to see a decent aurora on, I think it was Friday night, from my house as well, which was nice. And normally we have to look to the northern horizon to see aurora in sort of northeast Scotland, but this was right above my head, this one, which is the first time I've seen that. So yeah, a bit of an interesting week. I had one little sort of negative side though. The Land Rover starter motor packed up when we were camping, and I wondered how I was going to get it started again. And eventually I took my jump leads. I've got Anderson sockets on the front of the Land Rover, and I put the jump lead into that and took it around, but it was too big to touch onto the little sort of terminal for the starter motor. So I clamped it on to this and tapped that onto the starter motor with the ignition already turned on, and the Land Rover just fired straight up. And this is a speed equip that you can use on 10 meters. So we didn't curtail our trip. We kept going, and every time I needed to start the car, if I couldn't leave it on a hill to jump start it, tap, and away we went.
That Rover a Defender, is that?
Yeah, that's it. It's Land Rover Defender. It's a V8 Defender, and it's 40 years old. And what actually happened is it wouldn't start, and when I went to touch the wire, it came away in my hand. It was just fragile with being so old. So by the time I got home, I knew what to do. I made a new 6-inch piece of wire up and a connector, and it's working fine now. I just didn't have anything with me at the time to do it, but the old CB whip, I'll have to check and actually see if it still works as an antenna.
That's awesome. I love Defenders. Those are great. I have owned one Land Rover, but unfortunately it was the Freelander a few years.
Yeah.
And I have a Jeep now, but I've always loved the Defender. That's so cool.
You're muted, Morten, or well, you're not muted, but we can't hear you.
I was muted. I have got this nice button on my microphone. That was the most ham thing I've heard all this week, though, using a CB antenna to jump your starter motor.
I do love bodging. I don't know if bodging is just an English or a British word, but I do love a good bodge. It feels very satisfying if you can get something working again.
Oh, absolutely.
There's something about the car you can actually fix with a hammer. Like if mine broke like that, I need a tow truck.
And
a computer.
That ingenuity here in the United States when you do something like
I got to say that based on my experience, that the know-how necessary to actually fix that, it's mostly available among previous car thieves. That's been my experience. Yeah. I too know how to do that. I've never stolen a car, so there are exceptions. But yeah, I think.
So car thieves and ham radio operators then.
Yeah, let's say.
Yeah, let's say.
I think that's a compliment.
Yeah, how has your week been, Bob? What's your moment?
My moments. I went. There's been we have a concept in Norway of a vacation day that is either on a Thursday or a Tuesday. Then that means that there's one day in between the weekend and that day. In Norwegian, we call that inneklemt. Anyone got any idea what that's called in English?
It's a squeezed in day.
That's one of those.
One of those things. It does not translate well.
No. Well, in Norway, when that happens, we usually, at least the ones that are able to, we usually take that day off too, so we get a 4-day weekend. So I did that, and I went for Summits on the Air trip in all the glorious, fantastic HF propagation we've been having. And I basically discovered the same thing as when I was working on my Kilo, that even though there might be challenging bands, if you just start calling and don't give up, you're usually going to finish the activation. So I was on a summit on Wednesday evening, 2 summits on Thursday, 2 summits on Friday, and 1 summit on Saturday, and I finished them fairly easily, all of them. But the thing is, I think you just shouldn't listen to people saying the bands are bad. Just go out and try and activate and have fun. Works for me, and it worked all through last summer. Whenever someone said the bands were horrid, I would just still go up into that the Kilo Park and try and work something. One of the best days I had there. I think I worked 170 contacts on a day where everyone said that the bands were really, really difficult. So don't listen to people telling you that. Just go out and have fun with the radio anyway.
There's a slight bit of difference though between bands being difficult and the worst solar storm in 20 years.
Yeah,
it was the worst solar storm in years, and I still managed all 6 activations.
Yep.
Yep.
And
don't listen to the naysayers. Just go out and try and have fun and play with the radio. So
yep.
I think that's my radio epiphany of the week. Yep. Keep it short.
Kjetil, what's your moment of the week?
I also had one of those inneklemt days, squeezed in days. Like most people at office, there were some people trying to book meetings on Friday, and they were told to do it on Monday instead. Just how things work here in Norway. So I went on a small road trip, which ended up being twice as long as I expected. 1,250 kilometers. In Western Norway, that is quite a lot. On these roads. Some of these are single car wide lanes, narrow windy roads, and of course some are proper highways, but that is not so common. So beautiful trip, took me 18 hours of driving. I did 1 SOTA, 2 POTAs. Noticed on Saturday how horribly the bands deteriorated throughout the day in just 3 hours, from being decent to being harder but still workable. So that's the first time I've operated under KP9 conditions, and it worked, but it was slower. It took me half an hour to 11 QSOs on FT8 on 20 meters, which usually takes 10 minutes or whatever. So that was an interesting experience. Of course, I didn't see any errors because it was cloudy, and also it's bright. Like there, it doesn't get dark in nights here anymore. We won't have dark until August or something. So
that doesn't really help when you're trying to spot aurora. My moment of the week was I went out on Monday and filmed the video. I figured these are the worst band conditions ever. So I went out on Monday, did an FT8 video, spent about an hour to get 14 in the log on FT8 and FT4. But I got some decent DX. I got a couple of Asiatic Russia. I got a couple of Japan. I got 1 Japan, I think. And then I ended everything with Fiji. It's my first Fiji in the log. It's 15,000 kilometers on a day where band conditions were horrible. That's my only activation this week. Besides that, I managed to do WinLink while I fast charged my electric car on my way to work on Thursday. But there's a video coming on that on Tuesday, I think.
That Fiji thing is one thing I've noticed with these, like when people say the bands are dead, usually the bands are weird as well. So certainly you get like hops, maybe you get South Africa. Of course, that's workable at some times, but like it gets a lot easier to get. Maybe you get somewhere in Australia or Fiji or some other place that's really far away, which you usually can't reach with your normal equipment or power levels. So that is fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
I saw quite a bit of that from my mountaintops. I tuned around the bands and listened, and I heard many interesting stations. But of course, I brought the 705 with the 10 watts, and they were all in huge pileups. So, and my patience really isn't, it's not big enough to stick around to try to break through that on 10 watts. But yeah, I saw the same thing. Lots of interesting DX. The countries that I hadn't even heard about in Africa, for example. Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's because you actually can hear them because there's less QRM locally, or locally as in Europe, or if that's because they are the propagation is different. Could be a combination as well.
Yeah, many of the ones I heard was strong. 5.5 was stronger. So yeah.
It's interesting too. A lot of it is antennas. I know there's a guy near me that I can hear on the ground wave, and he's got a big beam, like 3-element Yagi or whatever. And I hear him talking all over South America, and I can hear him, but I can't hear South America. Yet we're like in the same skip area, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whatever. So I guess being up that high, maybe that even enhances what little antenna you have portable. I don't know.
Depends on the noise level as well. If he has
Yeah.
two or three S units less of noise, then that makes a world of difference.
And if you got that big beam, I've noticed when I go down to the club station, with the beam the size of my house, there is quite a huge difference when I can sit there with 100 watts and hunt POTA stations in the United States, which I cannot do at home. I see that Jeff here says that there's probably because there's less people on the bands because they think they are bad, but I think there is some more to it though.
It might be some more to it, but that is definitely clearly part of the reason why there are fewer people on, or why there are more difficult to make contacts on these days.
Oh, absolutely, because people don't turn on the radio.
Yeah.
Right.
It's the same as you hear people say that you can't use 80 meters during daytime. I've had lots of QSOs on 80 meters during daytime, if you have a good antenna and some power behind it. So
yeah, but they're usually local though on 80 meters at daytime.
Localized within Norway. So
Do you
don't
have
the
sufficient ailments to carry a conversation on 80 meters?
I can always complain about something hurting, or I don't have grandkids, so I can't complain about that. But there are discussions about other things, about being sick or having grandkids or whatever. I've heard people talk about fish, for example. Yeah, they got a big fish.
The reason I really don't like 80 meters that much is not because people talk too much. It's just because I don't really like rag tune with people I don't know.
Yeah, I have done SOTA on 80 meters, which is quite fun. Quite a lot of that actually. But that was when I always used the big band hopper antenna, SOTA beams band hopper, and that's 80 meters anyways. So that was great for getting local QSOs or within Norway. Of course, also that's one of the bands you can use AM in Europe. So that's quite fun.
I found when I was in Europe, 80 meters was really great when it was an 80-meter contest. You know what I mean? It changed the whole dynamic of the band. You're just popping, you're throwing them the 5.9. Thank you, goodbye, next guy. You know what I mean? I don't know. That was cool.
Yep. And with that, I think we're going to move on to the YouTube channel of the week. And that shouldn't be a surprise to you. We've featured this channel before, but since Fraser's on, I would recommend all of you to go over and check out his channel. You have a lot of really good videos, Fraser, and there's something about the way you make your videos that at least makes me want to go to Scotland and check out those mountains there. So absolutely great channel to subscribe to if you're not subscribed. And Fraser, the topic of today is your channel and what you do and how you prepare. Especially, you have had a couple of videos lately. The one on Pikes Peak and the one in France where you hang your antenna off the edge of the lookout point on the mountain. How do you prepare for these kinds of expeditions?
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for your kind words, Martin, about the channel. I've always videoed hobbies, back in the day on a big camcorder, and when I started doing SOTA, it just seemed natural to me that I videoed them and ended up putting them on YouTube, and there we go. So I'm an accidental YouTuber. But I initially started the channel thinking, I'll do a guide to every hill around here, and I very quickly realized that was going to be pretty boring after a while. So my videos have ended up, half the time it's what people ask me. If people ask me a question, or if enough people ask me a question about something, I'll sometimes do a video on it. But I do like videoing my activations from time to time. So my wife and I we had a holiday in Colorado and Wyoming back in September last year, and it was kind of an accidental holiday that we ended up doing what we did, because we booked this holiday, and then my wife got an appointment for quite what's the word? I don't want to use the word serious, but quite a major operation on her back. And so she was 8 weeks into recovery from this spinal surgery when we went to Colorado. So we weren't going to do our usual stuff, which is we normally fly over there and take a tent and travel about in a car and just not plan too much. So a bit less active this time. I mean, don't get me wrong, she's recovered really well now, but we were trying to find things to do. And I was like, okay, we can still go up mountains, but let's see what else we can do apart from hiking up them. So suddenly we've started to find all these drive-on summits. So Mount Evans was the first one, which has now been renamed Mount Blue Sky. And that's actually higher than Pikes Peak. You have to do a little bit of a walk when you get to the top of that, but only a few hundred meters. And God, that was a struggle. We'd only been in the country for a day. So going from kind of Scottish sea level to Mile High City at Denver, and then the next day going up to 14,500 feet. And I didn't realize until I watched the video back, I was absolutely talking gibberish for half of it. Just with the altitude effect. I thought it was okay because we got out the car and I felt a little bit lightheaded, but I managed to walk up to the summit okay, another couple of hundred meters. But when it was the concentration on things like call signs and even just the normal stuff you do in a QSO, I was awful. So by the end of the holiday, we'd spent so much time at altitude that I was okay on Pikes Peak. And Pikes Peak I'd always wanted to go up because I love my motorsport and I'd watched the hill climb videos for years. And I actually think they ruined it when they tarred it back in 2013 or whenever it was, because it was amazing when it was a dirt road. But it's tarred all the way to the top now, and we were up there in middle of September. They just had their first snows and did the activation, and I really was keen to do VHF from up there as well, given the height and the takeoff across the plains. Because when you're on these mountains, I think they call them the front range of the Rockies. You look behind you and there's mountains as far as the eye can see, mile upon mile, but you look in front of you and I think it's flat to Kansas, massive plains. So 2 meters was brilliant fun from 14,500 feet up as well. Made some good contacts with a handheld. And, I get as much fun out of doing something like that as I do from, hiking for 2 or 3 days in Scotland across peaks. It's just all brilliant fun talking to the people on radio from mountaintops.
Oh, absolutely. And it's at least for me, and I don't go out on mountains a lot. One of my goals is to do more SOTAs, but it gives you a reason to ascend those peaks.
Fraser,
absolutely.
you when you're 2 meters, you just go to the 2 meter calling frequency and start there?
Well, I wasn't sure of the etiquette in the States. So on Mount Evans, I got a caller and I said, okay, QSY. And he went, oh, so we QSY'd, and then people found me there because I think they heard. But I asked the question when I was on Mount Evans, and someone came back to me and said, no, you don't need to QSY, just stay on here unless anyone else is using it. So I think I had 14 or 15 contacts. They do have in the States, they've got what they call an adventure frequency on 2 meters. So the idea is if folk are out doing SOTA or whatever else on hills and out and about, they'll listen to this frequency. So I did use that on Mount Evans and made a couple of contacts there as well. But I can't remember the frequency, but it's if you Google it, you'll be able to find it easy enough.
I actually have the 2 meter simplex calling frequency on all my little bow fingers and whatever. I've done something similar. I went to, and not as far as the mountains, but I went to the top of a skyscraper in New York City and got on simplex.
Yeah.
I just call it CQ. And
brilliant.
And I was like, it was funny because I did a video on it, and about 90% of them go, yeah, no one's ever on simplex anyway, whatever. But there was always that one guy saying, you don't call CQ on the simplex.
Oh, you can. But what kind of power levels and antennas are you using for 2 meters when you're up like that?
Okay, so these days I tend to just use a handheld. And I'm looking over to the shelf there. Unfortunately, there's about 9 of them. I kind of got a bit addicted to collecting cheap Quanshengs and things like that. But, I actually bought a guy in the UK was selling a US spec Kenwood. It's one of the early ones that's got the the APRS and the TNC and all that. I can't remember the model. And I picked it up fairly cheap with a load of batteries. Because if you've got a Pucka EU radio, it won't work in the States. I mean, obviously all the Chinese stuff are quite wide band, but I wanted to take a decent radio with me in case it was operating near, transmission towers and things like that. And the old the old Kenwood did really well. The only downside was that the two of the batteries I got with it were the original NiCads, and they took a charge okay. And I thought, great, I'll whack these in first. And I also had a nickel metal hydride one that I bought. So I got these NiCads in, CQ, made one contact, and then the radio died. And I put the second NiCad in, got one more contact, the radio died. So I put the metal hydride in, and I was okay after that. So I've currently gutted out the NiCads. It took me about a week to try and work my way around the case and open them up, and I'm trying to work out if I can fit, like maybe some lithium-ion cells in there or something, so I can keep using them. But yeah, that was the only downside. Carried all these radio batteries to the States, and they lasted 1 QSO each.
I have a battery like that in my D74, and it's embarrassingly short battery time.
Yeah. But antenna-wise, I was going to say just the antennas. I think on Mount Evans, I actually planned on doing HF, but I didn't realise the summit there was quite a sort of narrow rock spine. And so I just hoisted up a pole with a Slim Jim on it, and that worked really well. But then when I was down on Pikes Peak, I was right above Colorado Springs, not too far from Denver. So it was just an RH770, the Diamond Whip, and that worked. They actually work as good as pretty much Slim Jims and all that kind of stuff. You've just got to watch. I wouldn't travel with one on the radio, because where the BNC goes in, or the SMA goes into the radio, it's it could put a bit of strain on the radio, but it's perfect if you're just static.
HF, what radios did you fly over with? I'm interested.
We had generous, because my wife was recovering from surgery. We splashed out on decent seats, and we ended up with a business class luggage allowance. So rather than my usual little bag with my KX2 in it, I thought, I'm taking everything. So I had the KX2, which I used for HF, but I also had an amp, one of these little 40-watt amps with it. I even I've got it sitting in front of me here, a little QDX thing, because I wanted to try the QRP labs. So I wanted to try some data modes. And I've got a little Raspberry Pi hook up to that. And I took a couple of handhelds. I wanted to try some APRS using my Yaesu FT3D, because I know that I think in the States, APRS is a much bigger thing. But me being an idiot, I didn't actually work out how I could do my call sign in the radio, because the APRS radios only take like a 5-digit call sign. My call sign when I was over there was, when we're in Wyoming, it was Whiskey 7/ and then my call sign. And there was no way of fitting all that into the screen of the APRS radio, so I wasn't able to use that. But antennas, simple wire antennas, end-fed half-wave, 41-foot random wire, because the KX2 has got such a stunning tuner inside it. You can use random wires with that really, really easily. But the standard end-fed half-wave 40, 20, 15, and 10. One afternoon, 17 was doing quite well, but I hit the tune button on the KX2. It tuned up on 17, and next minute I was working DX in France, just with 10 watts from the KX2.
Oh, that's great. That's cool. I've done what you quite a few times, crossing the Atlantic with HF rigs. The reason I never took a handheld with me, because I was in Poland and I knew language-wise it was going to be like my Polish is horrible. It was going to be like just wasting my time. So I always just flew with HF rigs. But KX2 is a great one to fly with too. I always, I've taken 4 different radios across the G90 for sure. The FX CR2. I've taken the X5105, and the one radio that almost got me in trouble, the little cheap USDX radio that I have in the Munich airport. They pulled me aside, took me like over in the back, and they actually put the powder on it and dusted it and taped it and everything. Like there was something going on with that radio. They finally let me go. But I'm always interested with other people, their experience of crossing the Atlantic with an HF rig.
I mean, I have actually done a couple of videos on traveling with radios, because I think it's one of these things people don't have confidence, and quite rightly, because you've got thousands of pounds or dollars or euros worth of kit, and you don't want them taking that off of you at the airport when you're heading off on your holiday. You'd be choosing between your family or your radio. And it is quite easy to travel. The only thing they're interested in really is the batteries, and you've just got to watch the airline's limit on batteries. And actually, my RH770 antenna, I know this is the CD one, but it looks the same as that. That came up in the scanner the last time I was leaving Aberdeen, and they've got the new scanners in the airports now in the UK. And I think they were just concerned because it was like a metal rod, just concerned it could have been something that could have been seen to be a weapon. And that's the only time I've ever been asked to open my bag.
I always checked all my antenna equipment when I went. Like I would have, balance, ununs, took 17-foot whip, stuff like you were talking about. I always put that in the check baggage and just send it on. And I have noticed a couple times though, when I got to the other end and got to the house there in Poland with the bag, someone they had opened and looked at everything. I could tell, you could just tell. And, but you're right. The battery it seems to be the issue too. It's 100 watt hours. I've never flown with anything bigger than a little 6 amp hour. This thing has crossed the Pacific and the Atlantic a few times. It's easy to fly with.
That thing is pretty close to 100 hours, Walt. It doesn't need to get much bigger than that. I think if you go to 8 amp hours, it's too much.
Yeah.
But it's 100 watt hours per battery, isn't it? On most airlines.
It is, but there's also a total of how much you're allowed to bring, at least in Europe.
Yeah, and you must be careful. You can add up your battery count could add up fairly quickly if you've got a couple of radio batteries, electric toothbrushes, phones, a power bank for your phone. They all count as individual batteries, and I think off the top of my head, I think is it 13 or 14 individual cells you're allowed, so you could get there quite quickly.
Absolutely. I see that Sean Hamray the Dude's got a comment in the chat here that he always puts stickers that read 64 watt hours on his batteries when flying. And don't take this as legal advice, though. This is by no means legal advice. And
what caused me issues in Munich was that radio had a battery in it. You know what I mean? I think that's really flagged everything.
Yeah, that's why I won't fly with my X6100, because at least the one I have, which is an early production run of it, that doesn't have anything printed on it that says what kind of battery is in it. There's no outside. So I can, of course, refer to the manual, but that's not good enough. Or you can risk that it's not good enough.
And it probably should be markings on it, though, saying how many watt hours there is, so the airport guys don't need to do the math.
And that should be in the form of a cheap home printed sticker.
Yeah, I think math skills is a requirement to be a security guard at an airport, sadly. So I wouldn't gamble on that. Just get it on the battery in the right unit.
And I actually need to get a new battery because none of my batteries have the amount of watt hours on them. And since I probably am gonna fly a bit in my new job, I need something that I can bring along to those activations or those parks.
Machine.
No, they need to be.
That is just a tiny step about handwriting on the battery.
Sean's gonna send me a picture on Discord of his travel battery, so I'm looking forward to that.
I got an issue once. Last time I flew with a radio, and that was that the battery was had printed milliamp hours and voltage, so they hadn't calculated watt hours, and that was an issue because this was quite fresh after they made those rules, but still it was not good enough. So that's interesting.
I think if the battery looks like and functions like a normal USB power bank, then they will accept the a limit from a list in milliamp hours or amp hours or whatever. But if it doesn't look, if it looks like a battery or even worse, like a bomb, then they will require it to have a watt hour designation on it.
Yeah, like
my worst ever time in an airport was arriving in Atlanta in the States on a different holiday, and we were camping this time, and I had an MSR water filter, which is basically a cylinder with a tube coming out of it, and you pump it away, the tube's in the stream, it pumps the water through, and you screw a water bottle onto it, and you pump away at this thing, and it cleans your water. When it was stowed, and I didn't realise this until the guy showed me on the X-ray machine, it looked very much like a hand grenade.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had some colleagues
So,
that was selling automation systems, or were making those, and they were sending a demo system to a convention in the States. 2 tanks with liquids in them, with oils in them, and then a lot of pumps and automation gear hooked up to this, and they shipped that in a metal container over in the States. It was like this big metal container thing. And that had been opened for some reason by the TSA.
Strange that. We got to hear some more about Fraser's adventures because this hour is we're running past really fast. I just got to say, I think we can make a public service announcement, Fraser, because you probably discovered when you do APRS abroad, you put your internationalized call sign in the comment on the APRS message. You don't know. That's the way you're supposed to do it, because as you say, I've looked at the protocol and you're right. There's room for 6 characters in the call sign and a SSID. Other than that, you're supposed to put it in the comment, the international call sign. So anyone wants to travel abroad, do APRS. That's how you do it.
And there's also another part of APRS, at least position messages, is that they actually send your country as a coordinate. They don't send the prefix, but that's another interpretation I've heard. Of course, not legal advice, and there's lots of weird interpretations in our hobby, but still you do send your position, which can be completely locked down to one location within a country.
Yep. And
why risk it? There's always room for a comment. Just put it in there. So,
yeah. Every day's a field day.
You ever consider just getting?
So you want me to talk about? You wanted me to talk about the Chamonix adventure on the Aiguille de Midi then?
Oh, absolutely, because I mean, the look on your face when you're activating out on that lookout platform, it's amazing.
Yeah, well, that's probably the most urban, I would say, SOTA I've ever done, and it was just an amazing experience. My wife and I were in Switzerland in Geneva for a week, a city break. Yeah, I took a minimum radio kit with me, so I had the KX2 bag with the bits and pieces in it, and I think I only took my 41-foot wire, the random wire, and a carbon 6 pole. So did a couple of simple activations around Lake Geneva, SOTA activations in not too good weather. And one day was looking like fantastic weather, and it seems a bit rude to go to France when you're in Switzerland, but it was actually closer to go to the French Alps. My wife had never been. I'd been there in my 20s climbing, and it rained all week, so I wanted to go back and see it in its glory. So we spent a lot of money, and these days I think it's people say they spend more on experience than on possessions, and it was worth spending the money on the téléphérique, the cable car up to the station at the Aiguille de Midi, which is about 12,500 feet up. We got up there, it was this beautiful sunny day, perfect alpine weather, and minus 15 degrees minus 15, but the minus 15 in the Alps was a dry air with sunshine and blue skies, and it felt warmer than sort of plus 10 degrees in Scotland with damp and wind. So you talk about how do I prepare for this? Morton asked me earlier. Well, earlier on in the week, once I realised we were going to do this, we were very near a castle, and I had an idea as to how I could set an antenna up with my limited equipment on the Aiguille de Midi top station, and I tried it on the battlements, the ramparts of this castle. Halfway through a SOTA activation, I kind of broke my station down. It was at the bottom, took it to the top, and I actually made more contacts on 14 meters with the antenna just strung out vertically and then dropped down to the, and hanging in free space than I did when I was sitting on the sort of picnic bench half an hour before. That gave me great confidence. I did a little bit of Googling, looking at people's photographs at the top station, and I'd worked out there was a steel rail I could use around there. And so when I got up there, the only thing that really was uncertain was which corner do I use. And unfortunately, the corner I had to use was the worst one, because it was hemmed in between a rock wall and a building. And I thought, you know what, if I make 3 or 4 contacts here, it'll be amazing. The radio was actually strapped to the railing. A lot of people have made a comment about the KX2 being in peril, because if it dropped it would have just kind of gone. And but you know, it worked. I made my 4 contacts. I kept going, and I thought, you know, I'm going to try this on 10 meters, again with a 41-foot random wire. You know, the building was between me and the United States, and straight off the bat, I got a station in New York come back to me, and I was just like, God, it doesn't get any better than this.
It's fun to
Yeah, go ahead, Kjetil.
it's fun to dangle things like that. I'm not sure if you know about the Pulpit Rock in Norway.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so I did a similar thing there. That's 606 meters straight down, and I had a Kenwood TS480 SATA and a lead acid battery. But that place actually has anchoring points for some different things out on the edge. So I actually did tie my radio to the rock just in case like something tossed it over. Also
Brilliant.
because there are people walking below there. Like there's a trail down below, and I do think radio from that altitude is not good. But I also just poked the antenna outside, and in there you can do a quarter wave vertical for 2.2 kilometers if you want.
The counterpoise for that would be fairly substantial, though, lying up there.
Yeah, but still, it's really cool to do things like that, like the non-normal antenna mountings, and that's something I think you need to be prepared on when you're doing our part of the hobby. Like, it's not going to be a football field up there, at least not all the time.
No, and you gotta look into and plan for those possibilities where your plan A just fails, where there are people all around the place where you thought you were going to activate.
I gotta say, I too have tried hanging the antenna, but not in such beautiful places as you two. I was with my son in New York at the 13th floor of the Gallivant Hotel in Manhattan. I stack my pole out the window and hang the antenna down and run FT8 from there. That was I was pretty relieved when I pulled it back in and still hadn't had any police on the door.
Of course, the ideal antenna. Sorry, Walt, I'll let you continue.
No, I was just going to say, I think the dangling, the whole concept of a dangling antenna from a high elevation it works. It works. I've done it out of a hotel window on the beach and from a balcony. And I'm interested. And Bob, we'll have to talk, man. I'm interested what kind of contacts you made doing that. I never realized you did that in New York. That's pretty cool.
That was FT8. That was the conditions were too horrid to get anything on sideband. But I did manage a few FT8 contacts.
Cool. Didn't mean to cut you off, Fraser. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I was going to say the ideal antenna for that kind of location. Obviously, Elecraft sell these AX1 and AX2 antennas that, you know, with just a 17-foot counterpoise you could chuck over the side. But again, I hadn't planned this, so I just had to use what I had. I do actually have the sort of poor man's version of the AX1, which is the company Rowaves that make a telescopic whip with a 17 meters counterpoise, and I've used that the sort of straight into the KX2 and used the KX2 as a handheld, but I didn't even have that with me. So it was even more rewarding that I just made the, you know, talk about a bodge. It was a bodge again, really. I just kind of bodged it together with what I had. And, you know, being amongst people as well, as you say, you've always got to be considerate. Normally when I'm on a Scottish mountain, there's no one. And I was also a bit scared the people were going to come out and chuck me off. But the folk that worked there, they were all keeping themselves warm inside. None of them were interested in what was going on outside, thankfully.
That was going to be my next question. You know, what kind of attention did you get from the other people up there? But apparently not much.
Not much. There was a 4-year-old girl that stood and watched practically the whole thing before her parents dragged her off. And so maybe a future fan.
Was this in Chamonix?
Sorry?
Or was this in Chamonix or across into France?
Chamonix. Yeah, it's actually interesting to talk about the attitude to ham radio in different countries, because I've occasionally in Scotland, when I see people, sometimes hill walkers look at me and thinking, why is he spoiling my walk by being there? In France, with lots of tourists, nobody was really interested. A few people looked. In America, when I was on summits, I was getting thumbs up and people saying, hey, well done, and all this kind of stuff, because I do think they really get it over there a lot more in the States. I felt that in my limited experience.
I get, living here in the States and going out in the middle of people on a beach, I get some really, I've never gotten, I think maybe one guy one time came up to me and said something negative, but I really get a lot of, what are you doing? I even had a woman come up to me one day and ask me if I was listening to the radio signals that where the whales had been tagged. Was I an oceanographer?
Okay.
The whale.
Yeah,
But
I've got a lot of weird questions like that.
There is something though about the United States, and that's my experience not only with ham radio, but Americans seems at least superficially more interested in you than a lot of European countries. You can be in a restroom on the side of the road and someone comments on your T-shirt. That would not happen, at least not here in Norway.
That would be considered some place between rude and trying to be hit on in Norway.
Yeah.
You should not compliment any part of another man in a restroom.
No, not in the toilet.
Yeah, that's
But we do have a we do have that
thing,
we do have a bit different thing when you're like out hiking. Of course, if you rig up your antenna on a summit, people can get annoyed. But when you're hiking there, everybody will say hello, or most people will say hello and be nice and maybe chat with you about anything just randomly. But up on the summit, I've seen people be quite annoyed that I've set up a mast there.
I've never had that. I'm really happy I didn't, because that would ruin my day, even though I wouldn't really care. I wouldn't do anything different, but I've never had that happen. I've only had positive experiences, and I think I've been it's got to be around 170 summits now, or activations, and never ever have I had any sort of negative feedback on being there and playing radio.
It's uncommon, and I think I've only had it, like I can remember, maybe 2 or 3 times. That's been on some really crowded summits. So most of the time, at least if there's people on a summit, I will always move away and like do something within the activation zone.
Sorry, Setel.
And if I know it that like there's gonna be people here, then I'll rig up also so that people can sit other places. I won't hog the nicest place to sit. That's part of like taking care about not messing up our hobby. And then the people that are interested can come over and say hello and ask, "What are you doing?"
You have to be respectful. I mean, if you take the hill walking element of SOTA, that's the important part for everyone else, isn't it? It's seeing the hill, getting the view, taking a nice photograph that doesn't have a 10-meter fiberglass pole in the background, and that's one of the reasons I just did VHF from Mount Evans, because the actual main summit area, there was loads of people up there. I didn't actually realize it was Labor Day until we started going up there, so it was mobbed. So I had to find this quiet bit away across a rocky spine, and I thought, well, I'll just do VHF because it doesn't take up any room, and it's just about adapting and being respectful of other hill users.
Absolutely, and I think when doing portable activations, whether it be SOTA or POTA or some other activation, it's all about being considerate of the other people, such as the trail rule in POTA, which say that you can be within 100 feet of the trail, so you don't have to be on top of people. And on another side note, back to the battery discussion, I just got to show this off because I got a picture from Ham Radio Dude here with this air or his travel battery, and I am not sure that this would be the right way to travel with a battery, though.
That is the cool new fuse box he made as well. That's nice.
Let's see if I cannot switch. He's got a close up here, but apparently I can't switch to it without showing the conversation here.
It's like a Klansman mine, isn't it?
Yeah, Claymore.
That's right. Claymore, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't take this as legal advice. I'm just saying that. So, and if you're listening to the podcast, this is a good moment to actually go in and see the YouTube video.
Maybe that should be our thumbnail.
But you've done. I see you do a lot of SOTAs there, Fraser. What are your tips, equipment-wise, for people, both when doing SOTAs locally and perhaps going abroad? But we've discussed the latter one, though. But what's your best equipment tips for people?
I think if you're starting off in SOTA, try and use what you have. Don't go out and spend thousands of pounds. And there's a very, very good website stroke app called SOTLAS, SOTL.AS, and it's got every summit on the planet in it. And if you go to a summit that you're interested in and you click on it, there's lots of information there about who's activated it and when and how many QSOs they had. But if you go further down, it shows you what bands the summits have been activated on. So, for example, in where I live in northeast Scotland, it's very rare for summits to be activated on 2 meters. But when you're near an area of population, as I said, when I was in the States or near Edinburgh or Glasgow in Scotland, then you'll find there's lots of 2 meter activations. So go and wander up a hill and practice, on 2 meters, and you'll qualify the summit. You'll maybe learn about how to do the SOTA log, how to put an alert on, how to spot yourself. Get all that sort of side out of the way. Don't take on anything that's Mount Everest, so you're not having to concentrate on doing an epic hike as well as carrying all this radio gear. And you know what? If you like it and you get a buzz out of it, then do a few more. The simplest antenna that most people make is an HF antenna is a linked dipole, and there's loads of inverted V sort of designer programs on the web where you can simply make a half wave 40 meter inverted V put a link in it for 20, shove that up a pole. It only has to be 4 or 5 meters up, and try some HF. Well, maybe not this weekend, but see how you get on with that, and I think go from there. If you like it, then you can start talking about lighter kit. Walt's been showing off some little QRP radios there. Talked about the KX2. When I got my KX2, because of the way Elcraft charge, you get the empty radio. I had an external battery and I used that, and then after a while did a bit of research, made a battery, bought a cheap one out from China that basically did the same job, and you go from there. And I think just get started in it. See how it does for you. I think that's the best way. That'd be my best advice. And then if you love it, you've got your birthdays and Christmas presents for the next 5 years sorted out.
It's most certainly a hobby where you won't run out of things to spend money on. But I like the piece of advice of using what you get or what you have, and that's why I try to tell new people as well, don't get the gear until you know what you want to do in the hobby. And even something like, let's see if we can, something like this, a cheap Chinese HF radio is good enough to try out and get started. What I would not recommend on your first SOTA, though, is an FD450 and a lead acid battery.
No.
Just speaking from experience here.
How about a 480 with a lead acid battery?
Even worse. I did mine in minus 20 degrees Celsius though. So when I've dragged all the equipment up to the summit, I ended up not activating because I was so cold and I was so tired.
Yeah. Mine was a failure as well. FD857 lead acid battery, and I'd made this antenna a 2 meter Yagi from using the tapes, measuring tape. Worked brilliantly in the back garden. I actually was working at ISS, waving it about. Thought I was a genius, and like Morton, I climbed the hill in the winter. It almost killed me getting up there, and got to the top, put the Yagi, and it just folded in the wind, and I couldn't do anything. I couldn't do anything with it, the tape measure Yagi. So came all the way back down again, and I could hardly walk for 2 days carrying all that gear up the hill.
Yeah,
But, by your viewers.
But that's part of the learning process, though, doing those activations where you bring the wrong gear and seeing it's equally as important to see what does not work as seeing what works and experiencing that yourself.
Or trying it out in the lowlands before you hike up a big mountain. Because
that would be my suggestion as well. Do a test run of the complete activation from a local park before you drag it up a hill for 2.5 hours.
Yeah, when you're doing a SOTA, you're actually learning lots of different disciplines. If you've not done any of it before, you're learning about fitness and exercise, climbing hills, all the skills to do with climbing hills and navigation, timing. Then you've got all the SOTA technical stuff to work out, and then actually working a pile up and using an HF radio. If you've never done that before, that can be quite intimidating. as well. As you know, with any of the portable radio schemes that are there at the moment, POTA, SOTA, WWFF, all those, you know, you can get some pretty hefty pile-ups that just keep on going, which is brilliant fun, but quite scary when you start doing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I guess like a typical thing newbies do is pack too much. Like they bring 2 extra coax cables and an extra mast and enough for food and water for half a week or whatever. That's heavy. Like everything builds up. But you learn that when you've not been able to walk for 2 days afterwards.
Yep.
I think I fell into that trap this previous activation. I got a new backpack. It's called a Osprey Kestrel 58, and that's 58 is for 58 liters. And I chucked that thing full of gear. That was different. Good exercise though.
But you said that on your last activations this weekend, you chose the ones that were short to walk to, right? So not enough elevation meters.
The last one, I did. The second to last one wore me out. So that was I drove to a really easy one. There was the road was closed, so I couldn't drive up. If it weren't for the fact that it was closed, I couldn't have driven to the top of that the last mountain. So, but I still took the heavy backpack though.
But it's something that's got to be experienced though, and you gotta experience for yourself and learn what kind of gear you should bring and what kind of gear you shouldn't bring and how much water you need, how much food you need, what kind of clothing you need. It's all got to be experienced, and you shouldn't be afraid of just turning around if it's just too heavy or you get the wrong equipment, and try again later with different equipment.
Or take the exercise part out of it. So in Wyoming and Colorado, we found 3 drive-on summits. So you've only got to operate your station not connected to or powered by your car. And the great thing about a lot of America and the continent, there's nice summits with picnic benches and all sorts. It's just like doing a POTA really at higher altitude. So that's a good way to start it as well.
I'm just browsing through your summits, Fraser, and apparently you haven't been to Germany much. They have some excellent 10-pointers drive-up summits.
They've all got pubs at the top of them as well. I hear one of my friends is over there. He was in a pub.
I know. I was there a few weeks ago, and in one single day, I did 5 10-pointers.
Oh, amazing!
Yeah.
But you're really racking up the SOTA points there, Bob.
Well, when you can drive up and just take one step out of the car and activate them, that's not really hard. But of course, you have to get to Germany. In Norway, it's a lot harder.
Yeah. We don't have that many drive-to summits. We have a few, and there's going to be a SOTA meetup in Norway this fall again, for the people that want to go to Norway and do SOTA. And that is going to be with one drive to summit. I think it's a 6 or 8 pointer or something like that, plus a few others nearby, or quite a few others. So for those who like mountains and hills, this is going to be in the hilly part of Norway, which is most of it. But
except where I live.
Yeah, you do have some small hills, but...
Yeah, but according to the locals, there are mountains here, but I've never seen one.
Yeah, but that's why you have other programs such as GMA or HUM or HEMA. Is that another one?
Yeah, I think
Humps
so.
That aren't mountains or something like that. So that's everything below 150 meters that you can say at least goes like this slightly.
Yep. And I can see on the time here, we're closing in on the hour mark here. It's been great having you on, Fraser, and it's been great hearing about your experiences and your travels with the radio. And it's been fun. It's finally been great to have you here, because I think I've watched your channel since before I got licensed. So awesome to have you on. I'm not sure.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure. I'm not sure what we're going to do next week. I have a thought back in my head that's saying we have something planned, but for the best of me, I cannot remember. So we'll see what happens next week.
I'll be at Hamvention next week, so I won't be here, guys. So You guys have fun. I'll be out.
Well, can you just be our Hamvention correspondent, though, Walt, so we could do a Hamvention show as well, together with all the other ham radio shows?
I'll check in with you, but by the time you're running, I'll be in the Jeep driving home from Hamvention about this time next week. So
Yeah. I have a feeling there's gonna be hundreds of videos in the feeds over next week about Hamvention.
To stand out, we should probably do a video that's not about Hamvention. That would be outstanding.
And I have a feeling by the end of next weekend, I'm probably going to know where everything is in Dayton.
It's like, you know, that spot Waldo, you can spot Walt. You'll see me and everybody else.
and I got a mission for you at Hamvention, Walt. You got to figure out Smoking Ape's real name and his call sign.
He's not going to be there.
He's not going to be there?
He's
okay.
That whole crew, he's staying back. He's going to be running their coffee and ham radios thing from home. He told me he's not coming. So everybody else from that group is, but he's not going to be there.
Okay.
Get one of his cohorts drunk and get him to reveal it.
Yep.
Yeah, what I can do.
And on that note, thank you guys for watching. We'll be back next week, same time, and we'll see you there. 7-3 all.
7-3.
Bye-bye.